ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه وبركاته عليه. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله جل في العلا وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue in Kitaab At-Tawheed, which is Wednesday, August the 21st, the 20th of the blessed month of the Hijjah, where the great pillar of Hajj was performed a couple of weeks ago. The year 1440 after the Hijrah, after the migration of the Prophet ﷺ, 7:06 p.m. And as we continue Kitaab At-Tawheed, we were discussing the affair of how the Messenger of Allah ﷺ guarded and protected the sanctuaries of Tawheed, the sanctuaries of monotheism. We were still in the chapter, rather in the narration where we stopped. As you'll find if everyone looks in their books, we completed the narration of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu ardah. And we know Abu Hurairah, his real name was who, everyone? His real name was Abdurrahman ibn Sakhr al-Dawsi. He was originally from Yemen. His name was Abdurrahman ibn Sakhr. There's a lot of names that they say that his name was, radiallahu anhu ardah. But that which is, they say, Asah al-Aqwal, or the most authentic of statements in regards to his name is Abdurrahman ibn Sakhr bin-Ra al-Dawsi. He was originally from Yemen and migrated with his mother, who also became Muslim. Radiallahu anhu ardah, his mother, Abu Hurairah and his mother. طيب. فَيَا مَعَشَ الْإِخْوَةِ, we will continue the narration where it says, or rather we completed, لَا تَجْعَلُوا بُيُوتَكُمْ قُبُورًا, do not make your houses graveyards, and do not make my grave a Eid. And we were discussing the meaning of the Eid. And we said that there was the Eid, based upon the categories we explained from the last class. The first category was what, everyone? Was Eid Zamani. Or Eid Zamani. We talked about this last class. I don't know if we want to just go over it quickly. We said the first type of Eid was Al-Eid Al-Zamani. A Eid or celebration or a time of gathering. Is this the meaning of all Eid? Or something that repeats itself? Because that's the meaning of Eid. It comes from the word Auda or Ada Ya'udu. And we know Auda means something that repeats or something that returns, meaning that is repetitious. As the word Eid, a Zamani, I mean appointed time, or the type of Eid that's done at an appointed time. And we discussed that it breaks down to two categories last class. So I'm going to go over this again because we want to get to the new benefits of today. We know we have a legislated Eid that happens at a specific time, such as the two Eids that we just completed after the greatest worship in our religion, which are considered a pillar of Islam, which is the month of Ramadan. And after that's completed, then we perform an Eid, which is called Eid al-Fitr. Then after another pillar of the religion, after that's finalized, then we also have another Eid, which we just established a couple of weeks ago, which is Eid al-Adha. And those are the only two celebrations that are legislated in Islam. Then you have the other category, what we said, al-a'yad al-mubtada'ah, those celebrations that are newly invented and that are newly introduced into the religion, which are considered innovated practices. Where you'll find, due to the ignorance of some of the Muslims, or due to the fact that they're following their desires, and they're following someone who's misleading them, they come with these newly invented matters in order to imitate the non-Muslims. And as a result of it, disgrace and humiliation descends upon the Muslims as a result of trying to follow those who have went astray from before, from the Jews and the Christians. And following them in these matters of trying to bring something similar to what they have, and you'll find as a result of it, humiliation, disgrace fell upon the Muslims as a result of trying to imitate them. Such as celebrating the Messenger of Allah's birthday. That is not something that the Messenger of Allah legislated, nor did any of the companions of the Messenger of Allah practice it. That was something that came later, and it was made, like we said, from the people of innovations. The people of desires, they're the one that came with these newly invented matters that were introduced to the religion later on. But at any rate, we said that the first category is what is legislated, and the second is what is innovated. You have the first category, what is legislated, and the second category, what is innovated. When we say innovated, we mean innovations in the religion, not the linguistic meaning of innovation, meaning as far as in regards to cars and the technology now improving or advancing or progressing. No, we're talking about what is newly invented matters in the religion. That is what is condemned, because that is what destroyed the previous legislation and revelation of the past. They came with newly invented matters until the pure religion in which Allah sent down became corrupted and it became changed. And as a result of it, people started practicing and trying to draw close to Allah by something Allah never sent down. And as a result of it, what they were upon of uprightness and correctness and soundness in the religion became destroyed and wiped away. So we said, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, this is the first category what we covered. We said the first category is what? What they call Eid Zamani. An Eid that is celebrated at an appointed time. And we said it breaks down to two, such as Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha. Then we said the celebrations of the Eid that are innovated. And you've seen, we gave numerous examples of this, such as what, everyone? Such as practicing the Prophet ﷺ's birthday, or such as having celebrations on the middle day in the month of Sha'ban, or for example, the day of Yom Ashura, of what the Shia, what they practice, when they take those chains and they beat themselves with it. All those are newly invented matters in which was not revealed by Allah Ta'ala, nor was it sent down with any authority. So those are the type of a'yad which are zamani, which are done at an appointed time. And we said the first two are what? The Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, and the other which was newly introduced, newly invented matters in the religion, which you'll find that a lot of the Muslim practice. And like we said, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, know that for sure these matters lead the Muslims, it leads them astray, and it takes them further away from Allah. The Prophet ﷺ made it clear in every khutbah, شَرَّ الْأُمُورِ مُحْدَثَاتُهَا. The most evilest of affairs are the newly invented matter ones. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ taught us everything that brings us close to Allah and will take us farther away from the hellfire. Except the message of Allah encouraged us to do it, and He taught us in detail what to do. And likewise, and vice versa, the Messenger of Allah warned us from those affairs that takes us far away from Allah and brings us close to the hellfire. And those affairs that bring us close to the hellfire and takes us far away from Allah until Allah's anger and His wrath descends upon us is a practice of newly invented matters, such as the celebration of the Messenger of Allah's birthday, or such as the celebrations and what the people do in the middle of Sha'ban, or such as what the people do in the month of Rajab, when they so-called claim that they know the night in which the Messenger of Allah ascended above the heavens, or he went to Palestine, and he prayed with the prophets in Palestine, which is in Masjid al-Aqsa, and then he ascended above the heavens, that they celebrate in that particular night. That is something the Messenger of Allah never legislated. That is a newly invented matter in which will take us far away from Allah and bring us close to the hellfire. Due to the fact that the Messenger of Allah made it clear, شَرَّ الْأُمُورِ مُحْدَثَاتُهَا. The most evil of affairs, the newly invented matter ones. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَ وَكُلُّ ضَلَالَ فِي النَّارِ. And every innovation is an astray, and every astray is in the hellfire. As the Messenger of Allah made it clear. As we know, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, Allah Ta'ala says in this book, we hear it during Jumu'ah every Friday, and it's a very scary ayah. As a lot of us, when we hear it, but we really don't truly, some of us, do not grasp the magnitude of what those ayats carry of meaning. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, عَامِلَةٌ نَاصِبَةٌ تَصْلَى نَارًا حَامِيَةٌ تُسْقَى مِنْ عَيْنٍ آنِيَةٌ. You hear in Surah Al-Ghashi every Friday. People working hard to draw close to Allah. And despite of that, they'll be burned in hell. Huh? Why? عَامِلَةٌ نَاصِبَةٌ تَصْلَى نَارًا حَامِيَةٌ. People working very hard, toiling themselves, rendering themselves weary and tired and exhausted to draw close to Allah. And Allah said they still will be burned in hell. And they will be given a drink from a boiling spring. Why? Two conditions they didn't fulfill. It wasn't sincere for Allah, it had polytheism in it, or it was newly invented. It was something that the Messenger of Allah or the Messenger never legislated. And as a result of it, they will be burned in hell. And it's like we said, not only is their action not accepted with Allah, but also they received the sin of trying to draw close to Allah by something Allah did not legislate. أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ شَرَعُوا مِنَ الدِّينِ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ بِهِ اللَّهُ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ شَرَعُوا لَهُمْ مِنَ الدِّينِ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ بِهِ اللَّهُ. Do they have partners that legislated for them something of an affair of the religion in which Allah gave no permission for? That's an ayah. Do they have partners that legislated for them? Came with an affair that one will be acceptable, that Allah did not legislate. And we clearly know the narrations. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa radd." We know another narration. "Man amila amala laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa radd." We know the narrations. The authority of our mother Aisha, she said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa raddun." Whoever comes with a newly invented matter in this affair of ours will have it rejected. Will have it rejected. And whoever does an action that's not in accordance with this affair of ours will have it rejected. It will come on the day of resurrection to find those actions are like sarab, or like a sarab, or like a mirage. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us and you firm upon what is correct so our deeds can be accepted. So that is from the Eid al-Zamani. Then you have what they call Eid Makani. We talked about this last class. You have what they call Al-A'yad Al-Makaniya. Those celebrations or those A'yad, or those, just the plural of Eid. The plural of Eid is A'yad. Those celebrations or those gatherings, all these are correct for the meaning of the Eid. Eid means celebration, a place of gathering, and a place of something that takarrar. Kull sana. أو في مكان معين, something that repeats every year or every week, considering what we're going to talk about inshallah, at a specific time or in a specific place. And all of these are the meaning of Eid, every single last one of them. You can say it means a celebration, of course, or it means, Eid means a celebration or place of gathering, or what? Or something that repeats itself. Either every year or every week in a specific place. In which we talked about last class, we said about Al-A'yad Al-Makaniya. Those celebrations that are done or performed in a specific place. Such as we discussed on Yawm Al-Jumu'ah. Yawm Al-Jumu'ah is a type of Eid. It's a weekly Eid on Friday. And it's done at a specific place, which is where? In the Masajid. It's done in a specific place, which is where, everyone? In the masajid. That's also a type of Eid. Yawm al-Jumu'ah is a type of Eid. And it's done at a specific place. Where is it, everyone? Right. And notice that all the meanings, all three I just mentioned, all apply on the meaning of the Eid. The first one is what? It's a type of celebration. It was a day of rest. Number two, it's place people gather. And number 3, it constantly what? Repeats itself all the time, every week. So all 3 meanings of the word Eid all applies to everything we're mentioning now. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? طيب. Then we talked about there's also, will apply to the first category, applies to the second category. Such as there are those places where it's prohibited to perform these type of gatherings or these type of celebrations or these type of worship. And we said, keep in mind, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that Eid or A'yad is the greatest form of worship. It's not just a celebration. They are the greatest forms of worship. Because you'll find that Allah legislate them always at the head of the greatest affairs of worship in our religion. Allah will seal it off with the Eid, such as after Ramadan and such as after Hajj. Is it clear what I'm saying? They are the greatest and highest form of worship. That's why it is very, very dangerous to practice a celebration that Allah did not legislate. It is very dangerous. Such as participation and partaking in the celebrations of the non-Muslims. Those affairs are very dangerous. And we know the narration of Kitaab, radiallahu anhu, I think it's Abdullah ibn Umar's son, where he said, whoever gathers with the non-Muslims, for those who are the non-Muslims and they're not Muslim or practices and their celebrations, he says, فَيَجْتَمِعُونَ مَعَهُمْ فِي عِيدِهِمْ يعني في مهرجانهم وَنَيْرُوزِهِمْ حُشِرَ مَعَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Whoever gathers with them in their places and in their times and in their celebrations. And the message of Abdullah ibn Umar, I think it was Abdul Khattab, he used the word Mahrajan and Nayruz. Nayruz is like a celebration of the Persians. Nayruz. It was like considered their New Year's Eve. The time when they celebrated some type of New Year's Eve. And Mahrajan, you'll find that the word Mahrajan is like another meaning of like a celebration. At any rate, the point of the matter of this particular athar, Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu mentioned and said, whoever gathers with them, partaking with them in their celebrations and in their New Year's so-called holiday and practices, he'll be gathered with them on the day of resurrection. حُشِرَ مَعَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He'll be gathered with them on the what? Day of resurrection. Just to let you know what, everyone, that these affairs are not something light. The affairs of the Eid are the most highest forms of worship. Most highest forms. It's not just also a celebration. We have fun, have laugh, ha ha ha. No. These affairs are very delicate, and they shall only be done in accordance to how Allah legislated. And if it's not done in that manner, you're now exposing yourself to something very dangerous, to the point where Ibn al-Khattab mentioned the other, that he said, if you gather with them and partake in what they're doing, especially during the times when they do it, he will be raised on the day of resurrection, gathered along with them. Also in regards to what the messenger, now I know this from Ibn al-Khattab, that he also mentioned and said, that in regards to these celebrations that they do in these particular times, in particular places, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath descends upon them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath descends upon them. For you find, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that these affairs of A'yad is not something what? Light. And the message of Allah sallallahu clearly mentioned the hadith of Abu Hurairah. What did he say alayhi salatu wasalam, giving clear instructions to his ummah? Do not take my grave as a what? As a Eid. Do not take my grave as a Eid. Do not take it as a place of what? Placed upon the 3 meanings, huh? Don't take it as a place of what? Celebration. Now, number 1. Don't take it as a place of what? Gather. Number 3, don't take it as a place to what? Constantly, every year, or every week, to what? Do it. Is it clear? Then the message of Allah sallallahu taught a great lesson at the end of the narration. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, clearly, send your salutations and blessings upon me. Verily, it reaches me wherever you are. Meaning, the person that gives salams to me, that's in the masjid, in Medina. And the person that's on the furthest, or the most, if you want to say, the most remote place in the dunya, in China somewhere. Except you'll find that person who's in the masjid and the person who's almost in the remote place in the dunya are all the same. As far as when they give salams and sending salutations upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? طيب. So we said al-a'yad al-makaniyah, those a'yad that are done in specific places, we said, such as Yawm al-Jumu'ah, or such as, what is a place that's considered also Eid, such as in Hajj, those places in Hajj, such as what, everyone, as we said and discussed, Mina, such as Muzdalifah, and such as Yawm Arafah, or such as the Mash'ar al-Haram. As the Mash'ar al-Haram, these are all the places that's considered, rather the people gather. A couple of weeks ago when they performed Hajj, and we'll talk about that, inshallah, if we cover the chapter of Hajj in the books of fiqh. But all those are considered places that are part of the Eid Makani. They're part of what, everyone? The Eid that's done in a specific place. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? طيب. The next thing now, that's what we covered last class in brief. Now we have to continue. طيب. So now let's get to the last part of the hadith. What does it say, everyone? Do not make your, what does it say? Now, send your salutations upon me, for verily your salawat reaches me wherever you are. Your salawat reaches me wherever you are. There's some very beneficial speech by Shaykh al-Islam that he mentions in regards to this particular narration, and there's tremendous benefit. Tremendous benefit. Right, let's complete the narration. Then we have the son of the great Sahabi, who's considered Rayhan al-Nabi sallallahu or Rayhanatuhu, who is the son of Hussein. Who's who? Ali. Not Ali ibn Abi Talib, who's his grandfather, but the son of Hussein, and his uncle was Hassan. His name was Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Read the other for me, Qurban. Can you read it for me? Huh? The other of Ali ibn Hussein. The other Ali ibn Hussein. Son. We already talked about the benefits of Al-Ahadith al-Mukhtara, Bahu Abu Abdullah, Diyauddin al-Hanbali, al-Maqdisi, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahid, rahimahullah. We already talked about that because we want to move on and finish the chapter. طيب. So this narration confirms what we've been discussing, puts confirmation on it, gives a little bit more details of what was the position of the Sahaba, what was the position of the companions, because that's what we want to know. What was their position? Did they used to constantly visit the grave of the Messenger of Allah, and which we'll discuss in a couple of minutes, or rather we'll discuss it now. You'll find that Ali ibn Hussein seen a man that he was in a space, and it was by the grave of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He entered in it and he started supplicating. He raised his hands and he started to supplicate. Upon that, if it was something that was permissible, or something that was known, or something legislated, or something established, and it was known amongst the Sahaba, they would have what? They would have okayed it. They would have said, okay, fine. What he's doing is not a problem. Have good thoughts. He's not doing anything that's prohibited. Rather, he advised them. He called him over and said, will I not tell you a narration that I heard from my what? From my father. Who's his father? Who's his father, everyone? Hussein. My father heard it from my grandfather. Who's his grandfather? Ali ibn Abi Talib. And my grandfather heard it from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know the Messenger of Allah that still was Ali ibn Hussein's family, because that is the father of his mother, his grandmother. His grandmother was Fatima. His grandmother. He said that I heard from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu لا تتخذوا قبري عيدا. Do not take my grave as a Eid. And do not take your houses as graveyards. What do we say that's the meaning of last class, everyone? As much as one is able to pray the voluntary prayers in one's house. But it's not only that. We said it's comprehensive for other meanings. What's the other meanings? Not only just for salat in the house, but other affairs such as remembrance of Allah, such as recitation of the Quran. As far as for saying Bismillah before you eat, before you drink, before you intimate with your spouse, to the end of it. All those affairs, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, is part of bringing life to your house and repelling and expelling the shaitan from entering your house and partaking with you in these affairs. And if the opposite is done, where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, do not resemble your house like a grave, because grave is a place where it's void of what, everyone? It's void of what? It's void of worship. One does not do worship or perform worship in a graveyard. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, do not take the status or the state of how graveyard is supposed to be, where it's void of worship. Do not make your houses like that. Do not make your houses like that. Rather, establish worship of Allah in it, except the obligatory one. For verily, as much as one is able is to perform it in the masajid, as much as one is able in this particular lands or in these lands that we're in. But in Muslim countries, you hear the adhan, alhamdulillah, then you can what? Then you're supposed to answer it. But in regards to what we live in this country, we're supposed to establish, the men are supposed to establish the salat and congregation as much as one is able. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ gave the exception, of course, except the maktuba, what is obligatory, but other than that, then establish the other types of worship in your households. Now, if you're far, for example, where you live in is, some of us are very far, we live in another area, Delaware, for example, Newark or what have you, and a person might stay here. In that case, you would pray your voluntary prayer here in the masjid. Why? Because maybe you have to go back to work. Maybe it's other things you have to attend to take care of. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Then a person will pray that, especially here. If he stays here a couple of salawat and he's far, he lives very far, then of course he prays his voluntary prayer here because he doesn't want to perform from dhuhr all the way up to maghrib, making up some of the voluntary prayers that he missed doing it all in his house. And it might be a little bit of a burden. Plus, when one arrives at the end of the day, he's usually a little tired. He wants to relax. So in that case, in these particular instances, then one will pray the voluntary prayer here. But if he lives close, and he's in the neighborhood, and his house is not far, then you should try to implement the sunnah, which is to pray your voluntary prayers where? In your house. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Such as our brother Fahid. Fahid lives kind of far. So in that case, he would pray his voluntary prayers where? He'd pray here. But if he lived close, that'd be something different. Such as what I used to do. I used to live close to the masjid, especially when I was in Washington, D.C., I would go home, I would pray my voluntary prayers from time to time in my household in order to revive the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where he encouraged, where in this narration, what we're discussing now. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? And there's other narrations that we discussed and mentioned and said. For example, we also mentioned last week where it says, where the Messenger of Allah commanded. There's another narration that says, Ij'alu min salatikum fi buyutikum. He says, give or make of salawat, of prayers in your houses, and do not take them as graves. So here you have a command form. Ij'alu min salatikum fi buyutikum wa la tattakhiduha qubura. Do not take it as graveyards. Then we have the other narrations. Do not make your houses like graves. Verily the shaitan that he flees from the house, in which Surah Al-Baqarah is being recited in it. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So that's what we're mentioning in regards to these narrations. So the Messenger of Allah, here in these narrations, you'll find a great Imam. If you look at your book, Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, you see how he used this narration in order to establish what, everyone? How the voluntary prayers, that one should do it in his house, of course, but he also taught, or he also extracted from this narration, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ prohibited worship being done in the graves in an indirect manner. How the Messenger of Allah said, do not make your houses like what? Graves. Why? Because graves is not a place where you perform worship. So it's as if the Messenger of Allah is saying here, what? Do not perform any acts of worship in the graveyards. Is it clear what I'm saying? It's as if the Messenger of Allah is saying what? In an indirect way. Like, do not perform any acts of worship in the graveyards. From supplication, from prayer, from prostration, from sitting on a grave, or supplicating where you're next to a grave, or grave is in front of you, or behind you, or what have you. Do not do that. It's as if the Messenger of Allah is saying that in an indirect way here. Like, these acts are not done in these places. However, don't make your houses like the places where worship isn't done. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Is it clear what I'm saying or not? So you'll find how the fiqh, the deep understanding that the great Imam, Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, that he extracted from the narration here. You see how he used the narration in order to show, and it also confirms what we've been covering in the past couple of lessons. How the Messenger of Allah prohibited that acts of worship be done in graveyards, or in the great places where, or in the vicinity where the deceased are buried. Be graveyards or what have you. Not to do any acts of worship because it opens the door of polytheism to the people. And like we said, opening the door of polytheism in itself is a tremendous sin. Tremendous, and it will also bring the wrath of Allah upon a person due to the fact of what happened with Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i, where the Messenger of Allah said, I seen him in a dream dragging his intestines in the hellfire. Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i, his name. And the Messenger of Allah clarified why. He said he is the first of those who brought the idols to the Jazirat al-Arab. That he found the idols that the people used to worship, and he brought them to the lands or the regions of the Arab, where he was the reason of why polytheism became widespread in the land, and he brought it to them. He brought the idols to the land, and to the point where you see the Messenger of Allah said, what came as a consequence and the punishment. And he said that I seen him dragging his intestines in the hellfire. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So opening the doors of polytheism is tremendous. And the Messenger of Allah prohibited that one, supplicate around the grave, whether it be to the side or the grave be to the side of you, and especially, if a person directs his worship to the person who's dead, then yet Islam is nullified. That takes you out the fold of Islam. That is a naqid. So just the mere fact of worshiping Allah by the graveyard, that in itself is a what? Tremendous sin. And to the point, as we discussed last class, and I said this in the last class, we made this clear. You'll find that a lot of Ahl Ilm saying that a person that performs a prayer in the graveyards, his salah is what? Batila. Salah is what? Is invalid. It's to perform his prayer over again. That's a salat that is performed in the graveyard, that it is what? Is invalid. It's batila. And they say that the prohibition, when the Messenger of Allah prohibited that the salat be done here in the graveyards, necessitate the invalidity of that act. Well, that act of worship is what, everyone? It's what? It's invalid. So a person needs to stay away from the graves, and it's so sad to say that we teach this, and you'll find that the Muslims, especially the deviant sect from the Sufis, they are the first ones that do it. And you'll find that's why Ahl Ilm clarified to say that so-and-so is quburi, is a grave worshipper. That's something severe. And you'll find that a lot of the Sufis are involved in grave worshiping. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us and you from that. And that is the reason why you'll find that disgrace and darkness is on a lot of those people. It's to the point where you go to even a lot of their places and their gatherings, it's like your soul cringes. It's like your soul cringes. It's like something in there is just not right with you people. Something is just some type of humiliation. You can just smell it and see it. Not only in their actions, but even within themselves. And only Allah ta'ala, for those who Allah has given enlightenment to their hearts with Tawheed and Sunnah and love of it, will see the humiliation and disgrace that has fell upon those type of people as a result of them committing the most abominable, most humiliating, and most hideous and heinous act that any human being could commit. And like we said, polytheism is worse than murder and bloodshed. Yes, it's worse. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Polytheism is worse. That's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is there any sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not said that He would forgive other than shirk, except that there's sins that He say He will forgive for, except what? He will never forgive it. Will never forgive polytheism if one dies upon it. Clear what I'm saying, everyone? Right. So we said in this narration that the Messenger of Allah seen, the great tabi'een. Rather, you'll find the Al-Ilm saying he's from the greatest and the most virtuous of the tabi'een, who is Ali ibn Hussein. As his house was a house of prophethood. His lineage was a lineage of prophethood. Either to the best of the ummah after Umar al-Khattab, who died, who was Ali, or the father of his grandmother, who was Fatima, is the Messenger of Allah. You'll find that Ahl-Ilm say that he was the greatest and the most virtuous of the tabi'een in his time. And كَانَ مِنْ أَحْسَنِهِمْ وَأَفْضَلِهِمْ. He was the most virtuous of them. He said, I heard from my grandfather, who heard from the Messenger of Allah, that he said, do not take your houses or graveyards, send your salutations upon me, for verily you reach me wherever you are. Shaykh al-Islam said in this regard, extracting benefits from this narration. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, he mentions, it says, فَانظُرْ هَذِي السُنَّةِ كَيْفَ مَخْرَجُهَا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْمَدِينَةِ وَأَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ الَّذِينَ لَهُمْ مِنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم قُرْبَ النَّسَبِ وقرب الدار لأنهم ذلك أحوج من غيرهم فكانوا له أضبط. He said, look to this sunnah. He said, look where it came out of. From the house, or from the city of Al-Madinah, and from the family of the house of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning they were from him, and how close in its lineage, and close in its dwelling place as far as in its family. He says of how they were established and what was their position, and how close it was, this affair. He says of what we need the most, of other than the people, you'll find that they were what? Had the most greatest of understanding and insight. He said, take in consideration this type of lineage and this type of blessed family that came from a lineage and house of prophethood. Meaning that in their house and their family was the Messenger of Allah. Like, what was their position? So this man that was praying in his space, if you look in his books, if you look in your books, he's praying in an open space. Until he called him. And in the house of Fatima, Yata'asha. There's another narration in another book of the Sunan. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this book, and it's another book that the students of knowledge need if you have the time and the money to purchase it and acquire it. It's called Sunan Sa'id ibn Mansur. And I'll talk about that later, that book. It's called, as Sa'id ibn Mansur, that he mentioned his Sunan, a narration. It says, فَرَآنِي الْحَسَنِ ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib عند القبر. This narration says, Hassan ibn Hassan, which is the same family, seen this man. He was standing in this open space. And he said he was in the house of Fatima. And he said he was eating. He said, come eat with me. So notice how he reprimanded the evil. So this is also to teach a lesson of how one is to what? Command the good and what? Forbid the evil. So notice he said to this man who was praying in the space, because this is another narration, but it's the same person who was praying in that open space. He said, Haluma ila al-asha. He said, come eat with me, dinner. So the man said, La uridu. He said, oh, I don't want dinner. I said, I don't want it. فقال ما. So listen to what he asked him. Listen what he said to him. ما لي رأيتك عند القبر. He says, what is it that I seen you by the grave? فقلت سلمت على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, I gave salams to the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. Listen what he said. فقال إذا دخلت المسجد فسلم. فقال إذا دخلت المسجد فسلم. ثم قال إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تتخذوا قبري عيدا. So then he said to him, if you enter the masjid, just give salams. That's enough. Meaning you don't have to walk to the what? To the grave. like it's going to increase your virtue, it's going to increase your reward, it's going to bring you closer to Allah. By the closer you get to the grave of the Messenger of Allah, give salams like as if it's going to what? It's going to increase your virtue. It's going to make maybe allow your salams to be delivered to the Messenger of Allah in a more quicker manner or more quickly or more expeditiously to the end of it. He says, if you enter the masjid, what? Give salams. That's enough. You don't have to overburden yourself by walking to the grave. So this is what he goes on to say. فَقُلْتُ سَلَّمْتُ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he says, إِنَّ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم. Then he said to him, verily the Messenger of Allah said, do not take my grave as a Eid. Do not take it as a place of gathering. Do not take it as a place where you perform worship. And do not take it as a what? An affair where you constantly do it, either weekly or yearly or what have you. Is it clear? And do not take your houses as graveyards. And send your salutations to me. Verily your salutations reaches me wherever you are. Then he mentioned the last part. لَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْيَهُودَ وَالنَّصَارَى اتَّخَذُوا قُبُورَ أَنْبِيَائِهِمْ مَسَاجِدَ مَا أَنْتُمْ وَبَنِي بِالْأَنْدَلُسِ إِلَّا سَوَاء. Listen to this narration, this part. The Allah cursed the Jews and the Christians. They took the graves of their prophets as masajid. You, meaning those who are in this vicinity, and those who are in a remote distance place, meaning in Andalus. And Andalus is where everyone? Spain. Spain, today. So you being in the city of the Messenger of Allah, in his masjid, and those who are in at that particular time, which was called Andalus, except that you are all the same. What is he talking about? Doesn't matter whether you get salams here or whether you get salams what? Far, no matter where you are. Except that it's all what? It's all the same. Is it clear? Andalus was what? It was where we know where everyone? Spain, especially in the southern part. As the Muslims had conquered Spain. Know your history. Yes, you do. The Muslims at one point in time, ruled Spain, especially the southern part, where Jabal al-Tariq is. And they still have an area, there's still a place to this day in Spain where it's called Andalusia. It's still there. It's in the southern part of Spain. You got to just look on your phones if you want to find. Not now. After the lesson's over. It's called Andalusia. It's still there in Spain. It's in the southern part. It's in the southern part of Spain. I've been to Barcelona, that's in the northern part. The southern part is called Andalusia. It's still there, and it's still like that. It's written just like that. Andalusia. Andalasia. I think they translate it as Andalasia. Andalasia. The Muslims used to rule Spain. Yes, they did. Until something happened, and I'll talk about that later. Just know for sure, do you know the reason why? What happened? Because of what we're discussing now. The Muslims fell into going against what we're talking about now. And they started disobedience, polytheism, practicing bid'ah. It rendered a severe weakness to the Muslims. And as a result of it, they lost the land. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Jay, we're going. That has some details in it. We'll talk about it later, inshallah. Especially, I think it's called Jabal al-Tariq. It's called Gibraltar. The mountain is still there. Gibraltar, I think they translate it. It's called Jabal al-Tariq. It's still there. It's still in Spain. Jabal al-Tariq. They translate it as Gibraltar. Gibraltar. It's still there. If people read history, you'll be surprised where the Muslims were, how far and what they conquered. They conquered all the way up to China, reached all the way up there, all the way up to what? To the furthest parts of Europe in a short time frame. And that is what the non-Muslims are afraid of. That's what they know the non-Muslims are afraid of, rahmakallah. What they're afraid of is that one day the Muslims will really come back to their senses and realize that the only way that they're ever going to what? Be strong again is if they unify themselves under one belief system. Not a lot of belief systems. One belief system. What the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba were upon, that's what they're afraid of. Why I say they're afraid of that? Because they know that the weakness of the Muslims is to start a deviant sect from amongst them. And you'll find that the majority of the deviant sects from the Sufiya, from the Shia, from the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, even the Haddadiyya of today, you'll even find that Sheikh Rabi' even mentioned from their history, he said, I wouldn't be surprised who's behind these sects that are coming, especially the Haddad and Mahmud wa Haddad. He said was all somebody behind the scenes who's a non-Muslim funding him to come with a deviant sect to render the Muslims what? Even more weak. Because what's that to show you, everyone? That the non-Muslims, they know the strength of the Muslims come from where? From their belief system, from their aqidah. They know it. It's sad to say that the non-Muslims know it and the Muslims what? A lot of them truly don't know that. and not only that, not only do the Muslims are agreeing and they do it, they even make war with those who are trying to what? Establish what's correct and unify them, a legislative unification. Make war with them. If that's not severe weakness, I don't know what is. Those who's trying to bring the honor back to the Muslims and the might and the strength and bring and remove truly corruption from the lands. And bring people together and bring people unified and bring loved ones together and bring families together and eradicate all these social ills and all this violence and all these mental illness. Now, the only way that can be done is the establishment of the monotheism and the worship of Allah. And those who are implementing that and propagating that is Ahlul Sunnah and the people of Tawheed and the people of Sunnah and the people of Salafiyah. And not only that, the Muslims make war with them. Then what do you think was going to happen if you keep doing this? You think that Allah is going to give us strength? That the weakness is going to persist? And it even will get worse. And that's what you see was happening every day. The non-Muslims know the source and the strength of the Muslims comes from their belief system. They know that. That's the reason why they the ones that fund a lot of these deviant sects from them. As you'll find what happened with the Ahmadiyya. As the Ahmadiyya, his name was Ghulam Ahmed Al-Qadiani. They called him, his nickname was the what? Who was the prophet, the false prophet that was sent by the British. The false prophet that was sent by the British. Why do you think they came with him? And that's what happened when they sent to Pakistan and they had, now, of course, we see what happened when they, man, that history is bad in itself. But at any rate, they were sent by the British and the Muslims fell for it. And you still have Muslims still to this day believing that Dajjal was a prophet. You just got a masjid of the Ahmadiyya has been built right now in Philadelphia, and a lot of people are attending it to let you know how messed up the mentality of a lot of Muslims due to their ignorance, where the magnitude of misguidance is. To the point where you find a Dajjal, a person who was a made-up prophet that was sent by the British to be planted in the ranks of the Muslims to render them severely weak. And you have Muslims that actually believe that nonsense. Read your history. Educate yourself on these sects, and you read yourself, the more Salafiyah and the Haqq becomes clear as the sun in the sky to you. That what you're upon, you will have no doubt that what you're upon, inshallah, is the truth. You have no doubt about it. The more ignorant you are, the more you're open for attack. Where these ideologies can come and corrupt your mind and can mess you up. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Right. So now what happened during the time, he says, send your salutations upon me. Verily they reach me wherever you are. Right. So now you have this narration. Already? You want to call? Hold on. Amir. Which Amir wants to call? You want to call the Amir in the office or the Amir out here? No, he came out before. He wanted to call it. Maybe he didn't see you. Amir, you want to call it? Amir in the office, not the Amir out here. You want to call it? Hold on. What time did the Salah come in anyway? Wow. Man, time is flying. Do you guys, everyone understand me? We're not trying to unite the Muslims in their bodies and their numbers. We're trying to unite them in their hearts and their beliefs. That only can occur by unifying them under one belief system. That's it. The only thing that's going to give honor to the Muslims will give honor to Allah and His Messenger Sahaba. They were not united upon different beliefs. They were united upon one belief, one conviction. No more, no less. Allah is one, the beliefs is one, the truth is one. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Jay. He's calling it. You don't hear it? I hear it. I hear it. Sure. Sure. طيب. As we said, Ali ibn Hussein, if you look in your books, from his nickname or who he was known for, the name, nickname, excuse me, I'm sorry everyone. His name was Zainul Abidin. Zainul Abidin. Zainul Abidin. Zain al-Abidin. Al-Hussein ibn Ali. No. Ali ibn Hussein. Ali ibn Hussein. Ali was named Zain al-Abidin. Ali ibn Hussein, his name was Zain al-Abidin. For the most virtuous of the Tabi'een, as Al-Imam Az-Zuhri, that he mentioned about him and said, مَا رَأَيْتُ قُرَشِيًّا أَفْضَلَ مِنْ. I never seen anyone who was Qurashi, from the Quraysh, meaning from that family, from that tribe, that was more virtuous than him. And he died 93 upon what is correct, meaning the 93rd year, the 93rd year after the hijrah of the Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, meaning he died 93 after the hijrah. Listen to what Shaykh al-Islam said about this narration. He said something very beneficial I wanted to read quickly. I'll just read it in English. Shaykh al-Islam said about all these narration we've been speaking about. He said, I did not know anyone that made it permissible or gave an allowance for this. What is he talking about? Meaning someone go to the grave of the Messenger of Allah and make dua by it, or perform worship by it, or in front of it, or behind it, or to the side of it, or supplicate to it, or what have you. He said, I do not know anyone رَخَّصَ فِي ذَلِكَ. They gave an allowance for that, meaning that allowed them or gave them the okay to do that. He said, due to the fact that this type of affair, of the people gathering around it, supplicating near it, or by it, or what have you, is taking it as an Eid. And this is what he goes on to say. He said, this indicates this also, that أن قصد القبر للسلام إذا دخل المسجد ليصلي منهي عنه. He said, due to the fact, well, also indicates to this, and also substantiates this with some of the evidences. He said, is a person, when he intends to pray or perform worship at a grave in order to give salams, if they enter the masjid in order to pray in it, is prohibited, especially if there's a grave in the masjid. But we talked about a couple of lessons ago how the grave of the Messenger of Allah being in the masjid is not like how the people do it in those other masajid in other countries where they purposely put the grave inside of the masjid. We gave details in that. And we said the difference, right everyone? Because I want to make sure that's clear. But anyway, you'll find that Imam Malik, the great Imam of Ahl Dar al-Hijrah, as we know that Imam Malik ibn Anas al-Usbuhi, was the Imam of Al-Madinah at his time, that he said, every time a person would enter the masjid and they would come to the grave of the Messenger of Allah. Because none of the Sahaba used to do that. He said, لَمْ يَكُونُوا يَفْعَلُونَ ذَلِكَ. Then listen to what Shaykh al-Islam said. He says, for verily nothing will rectify the latter of this nation except what rectified the first. So that's to show what? That this was not something that they used to practice. There was only one athar, one narration that was mentioned upon Abdullah ibn Umar. And I'm going to discuss that. Where he only used to do it, and I'm going to talk about his action, what he used to do in a couple of minutes, when he would come back from a travel, and that's it. But some of the Sahaba said maybe these texts did not reach him. And they said that what he did was not correct, even though, like we said, Abdullah ibn Umar, maybe perhaps he did not what? These texts and what we're reading right now did not reach him. So some of the Sahaba totally what? Did not agree with that act. Just listen. He said that the Salaf, that they did not do that. And nothing will rectify the latter of this ummah except will rectify the first. The Sahaba and the Tabi'un used to come to the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ and pray in it. And if they would finish their prayer, they would sit. They would sit to either what? Do all the acts of worship which is known and established and which has been legislated, or they would leave. They did not used to go to the grave of the Messenger of Allah to give salams. He said, لم يكونوا يأتون القبر للسلام لعلمهم أن الصلاة والسلام عليه في الصلاة أكمل وأفضل. He said they due to their knowledge that the salat and the salams upon him in the prayer was what? Was more virtuous, rather it's the most virtuous, and it was most complete. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Is it clear or is it not clear? Fine. As for them entering in the masjid by the grave of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, or to pray by, or to supplicate, then فَلَمْ يُشَرِّعْهُ, the Messenger of Allah did not legislate it. لَمْ يُشَرِّعْهُ لَهُمْ, rather he prohibited them from doing that, where he said clearly, لَا تَتَّخِذُوا قَبْرِي عِيدًا, do not take my grave as a what? As a Eid. But however what? Send your blessings upon me by giving salutations to the Messenger of Allah, to the end of the narration. So the Messenger of Allah clarified. All what I'm saying now is the speech of Shaykh al-Islam. He said, فَبَيَّنَ أَنَ الصَّلَاةِ تَصِلُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ بُعْدٍ وَكَذَلِكَ السَّلَامُ وَلَعْنَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ قُبُورَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ مَسَاجِدِ. The Messenger of Allah made it clear that the salah, meaning the salutations, that they arrived to him from remote distances, no matter where you are. Similar to that, sending salutations by saying, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, or sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or alayhi afdal as-salam, or timmat taslim, to the end of it. Whether it be salams or whether it be salawat. Because the Messenger of Allah clearly said in the narrations that we already explained in the prior lessons, the reason why the curse descended upon the Jews and the Christians from what, everyone? They took the graves of their prophets, what? Masajid. They took the graves of their prophets as masajid. And then he goes on to say the reason he started talking about why the grave, as a result of it, what happened as far as the masjid. As we already talked about that. We don't need to reiterate it. It says, we already explained that. وهم مع ذلك التمكن من الوصول إلى قبره لا يدخلون عليه لا للسلام ولا للصلاة ولا للدعاء لأنفسهم ولا لغيرهم ولا لسؤال عن حديث أو علم. He's talking about the grave. That they did not used to enter, not for salams, not for salat, not for dua, not for themselves or for anyone else, nor for question, or for hadith, or knowledge, meaning by the grave. Meaning having the belief that if I do it by the grave, this is something virtuous. Is it clear what I'm saying? Like because we're sitting here, it's right by the grave of the Messenger of Allah, there's some type of virtue in that. This is what he's just talking about. All this is what, everyone? Prohibited. To even have that belief, like us sitting by the grave, let's get closer to the grave of the Messenger of Allah and go over ilm. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Is that a fair legislator? No, it isn't. No, it isn't. As soon as you enter the masjid, you can say salams to the Messenger of Allah. Allahumma salli wa sallam barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. وسلم على أبي بكر وعلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وصاحبيه. Was two companions. Kafa. It's enough. The only place you would pray if you was to enter the masjid, if you wanted a certain virtue, is in the Rawdah. The Rawdah. The Rawdah. Where the Messenger of Allah said, by my minbar is a garden from the garden of what? Paradise. That's it. As far as for the grave of the Messenger of Allah, that is prohibited. Or for example, you'll find, let's get closer to the grave. Here, let's pray closer to the grave. Let's get close as much as we can to the graveyard. As much as possible. All that's what, everyone? It's prohibited, and there's no virtue in that. Rather, something the Messenger of Allah what? Warned against. Not to take his grave as a what? As a Eid. Or especially as a masjid. As a masjid or what? Or Eid. Is it clear? Is it clear or is it not clear? So listen what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. He says, وَلَا كَانَ الشَّيْطَانِ يَطْمَعُ فِيهِمْ حَتَّى يُسْمِعُهُمْ كَلَامًا. Listen to this part right here. Listen to this one. This is what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. It says, وَلَا كَانَ الشَّيْطَانِ يَطْمَعُ فِيهِمْ حَتَّى يُسْمِعَهُمْ كَلَامًا أو سلاما فيظنون أنه هو يكلمهم وأفتاهم وبين لهم الأحاديث أو أنه قد رد عليهم السلام بصوت يسمع من خارج كما طمع الشيطان في غيرهم فأضلهم عند قبره. Clear what I'm saying, everyone? This is what it goes on to say. He says Shaitan will come. This is some of the stories in the qasas of the Sufis, as they're known for this. He said that Shaitan will come, and if he wants, and he wants to mislead them, and he wants to now start some type of, or stir up some type of fitna for them, or trial for them. He will come to them and make them hear some type of speech or some type of salams. And they would think that it's the Messenger of Allah speaking to them. Or the Messenger of Allah giving them a fatwa. Or the Messenger of Allah is clarifying to them some hadith. Or the Messenger of Allah is replying some salams to them by a voice that is heard from what? Outwardly. Just as the shaitan was what? He had that strong desire in leading them astray. He says, كَمَا طَمَعَ الشَّيْطَانِ فِي غَيْرِهِمْ. As shaitan had trapped others from amongst them. And he led them astray by the Messenger of Allah's grave. This usually happens in most cases to the two groups. It's not just the Sufis, but the Shia, the Rawafid, by the Rawafid from the Shia, and the Sufis. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? But the Rawafid, like we talked about, everyone, they're the ones that opened the door of what? Taking the graves of the prophets as masajid. They were the first, as he says, Shaykh al-Islam, we talked about last class, he says, was it فَعَذَّبَ الْقَبْرِ or was it? No. I just remember it. فَبَنَى عَلَى الْمَسَاجِدِ وَعَظَّمَ الْمَشَاهِدِ. بَنَوْا عَلَى الْمَسَاجِدِ وَعَظَّمُوا الْمَشَاهِدِ. They've built graves upon their masajid and they glorified the mashahid, meaning those places that are so-called sacred and holy. They magnified and glorified it until the people started what? Committing practices of polytheism in those particular places. The Sufis followed them in that. That's why you'll find that the ulama, and I used to hear this constantly from Sheikh Rabi', he used to say, الصوفية فيهم الرفض فيهم الرفض. The Sufis, that they have Shia, or the ideologies of the Rawafid within them. They took the ideologies of grave worship from the Shia. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So this is what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. I'm about to close this lesson now. We got to pray. He says, وَقَبْرَ غَيْرِهِ. Just as Shaitan led them astray by the grave of the Messenger of Allah, and other than the grave of the Messenger of Allah, Shaitan did. He says, until that they thought that the inhabitant of that, or the person that was deceased in that grave, was commanding them, or prohibiting them, or giving them religious fatwa, or speaking to them outwardly. And sometimes, listen to this part, وَأَنَّهُ يَخْرُجُ مِنَ الْقَبْرِ وَيَرَوْنَهُ خَارِجًا مِنَ الْقَبْرِ. He says in his times when Shaitan utilized and capitalized to mislead them by seeing, for example, that the deceased would come out of the grave, and they would see him outwardly outside the grave. And they would think, وَيَظُنُّونَ أَنَّ النَّفْسَ أَبْدَانَ الْمَوْتَى خَرَجَتْ تُكَلِّمُهُم. And they think that that those same exact people who are dead, that they came out and they started to speak to them. Or that the soul of the dead came in the form of a body for them, and they seen it. And they say the same thing as that they seen the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what they say on the night of when he ascended, Laylatul Isra wal Mi'raj. He said, what is intended that we want to gather up from this is that the Sahaba, they did not used to do this. It was not something that was known. They did not used to what? Come to the grave of the Messenger of Allah or do these acts or perform these acts of worship. كَمَا يَفْعَلُهُ مِنْ بَعْتِهِمْ مِنَ الْخُلُوفِ. Just as those who came after them from those who succeeded, meaning they came later. He said, وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ بَعْتُهُمْ يَأْتِي مِنْ خَارِجٍ فَيُسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِ إِذَا قَدِمَ مِنْ سَفَرٍ. Now he's talking about the Athar ibn Umar. I'm going to stop here. He said, for verily some of them, they only used to do it if they came from outside, and they would give salams if they only arrived from traveling. What is he talking about? The Athar of what, everyone? Abdullah ibn Umar. And that's what I'm going to talk about next class. I want to take some time out to speak about this particular Athar and what the ulama say upon, or what did they say about it, because that's very important. But as for the other Sahaba, then they did not used to what? Do this. And I'm going to stop here, inshallah. I'll stop here and I'll give you the rest for next class. طيب, any questions about the lesson? تفضل. عمر ابن لحي الخزاعي with a عين. عمر ابن لحي الخزاعي. عمر ابن لحي باللام with a lam. لحي الخزاعي. تفضل عبد الله. That's also mean of Eid. Eid is a derivative of the word Auda. Auda means something that it returns, meaning it repeats itself. For something annual, what they say. Which are non-Muslim, what, the Muslims or non-Muslims? If it's something they do yearly, that's Muslims or non-Muslims? Oh. What I tell brothers in regards to now celebrations with the non-Muslims, they might invite you, for example, especially, for example, people who's close in your families. That used to happen before my parents died. Sometimes they would call me, I'll come over, they ask me, we just cook some food for you. And then when I showed them, they showed me respect. They said, we know you can't stay because, you know, the liquor and stuff like that. So here's the food. It was good talking to you. I would stay, talk to them for a couple of minutes, and I would leave. And they would know that, you know, my religion, as far as them sitting and drinking alcohol, and intoxicants being, and the music blasting, no, I can't do that. So I would come, talk to them for a couple of minutes. They would give me a plate of food, and I would leave. And that's all I would do. Say it again. Do they force you to do it? Is it something binding you have to do? Will you lose your job? Will you be threatened that they will start treating you funny, and they might fire you? So that's seen as ijbari. That's if you don't show, that seems like that's something they made that's binding on you. Why don't you just do what I did? Come in. How you doing? How's everything? Gotta go. Anything else, anyone? Zainul Abidin. That was another name for Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali. Zainul Abidin. Zainul Abidin. Tafadhal. No, go ahead. It's the same. You send the salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, you find Shaykh al-Islam said that's the best form of sending salutation upon the Prophet ﷺ in the salat. When you've been commanded to do that, that suffices. It's enough. There's no virtue in you going to the grave and saying it. Well, let's go get the grave and give salam to the Prophet ﷺ. For what? These narrations are clearly showing what, everyone? There's no difference. Whether you do it close to the grave or whether you're in China, there's nothing going to be a difference between whether you do it next to the grave or whether you're in the most remote place in the dunya. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to increase anything. So just follow the sunnah, stay away from it, and that's it. As far as like we said, the other Abdullah ibn Umar, we'll discuss that next class. For the Fahid. Mm-hmm. Or the house, just to look at the house of Aisha? Nothing wrong. Well, technically, you can't even see it because it's protected. They fortified it with like fences, gates, walls. So that's why I understand. People, they want to see it. There's no way you can see it. If you go to the grave of the Prophet, you can't see it. They fortified it. They protect it. There's gates. There's walls around it. It's protected. But if you want to just see what the house looks like, there's nothing wrong with that. You just want to look at the house to see, okay, this is where the Prophet, this is where the house was at Aisha. This is how the house was. This is the masjid. There's nothing wrong with that. You just want to look to see it. There's nothing wrong with that. You just want to say something? I thought you had raised your hand. Father Bilal. What happened? I told you. Where do you kids? Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i. I'll give it to you after the salah. Anything else? Fadl. If you can get it, but that's not really a Sunan Sa'id ibn Mansur. It's a book you need. Your student knowledge does need it as a reference in his library. It's called Sunan Sa'id ibn Mansur. But it's not. You need it. Student knowledge should have it as a book. It's a reference. It's called Sunan Sa'id ibn Mansur. Sunan Sa'id ibn Mansur. It's still matbu'. It's out there. You can buy it in the libraries overseas. It's around. Anything else? No, it's not. Sunan Sa'id ibn Mansur is not in English. Anything else? That's it? طيب. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.